In this video we're going to create the last state for our game, which is a level completed state, as well as start putting in some code for our HUD so we can bring in the Flash movie and it'll display for the player and also update so the player knows how many of the objectives he's collected and things such as that. To get started we need to do one change to the actual class declaration. At the top here we're going to do class PUZ game extends UDK game, and then we're going to do config game. What this is going to do is create an INI file that's going to save certain things about this, such as config variables, into the INI so that we can pull that information later and keep on using it if we need to. So that along with that, after we do that, we need to then create our two variables that we'll be using. We have variable config integer player points, which keeps our player points, and we have a variable constant integer per object value. Like every constant, you need to say what its actual value is. So we're going to go down to the bottom here, and we're going to say per object value equals 20. So for every object that this player collects, when he gets to the end of the map and he can actually successfully move on to the next level, each objective is worth 20 points. You can set this to whatever you like. If you feel more comfortable giving more or less, that's up to you. Alright, so we'll scroll down here to level completed, and we have two states. We have begin state and end state. For now, we're going to skip the local variable here and also the use of that local variable because we're going to come back to that when we get into the HUD. We have in here one of our variables that we create at the top, player points, and that's going to be plus equal, which means we add player points into this as well, so that just in case if for whatever other reasons we might be adding points during each level. And then we're going to do our math, which is per objective value times PUZ player dot objective counter, which is that counter that we were using of how many of these objectives he's picked up. Once that's done, we save config, and this will then create that config for us so that we can reuse this information later. Now we're going to go up to our game in progress, and in this if statement here, if PUZ player dot objective counter is greater than or equal to objective amount required and the PUZ player is in the portal, we're going to remove that log that we had there before, and we're going to put go to state level completed. So now we can shoot down to the level completed when he does meet those requirements, and then it'll add up the points. Alright, so now our next step is to get involved with the HUD, and then we can come back to this and show how we make some changes to that. First, we're going to go into PUZ HUD, which is a class we should already have created. And inside, we're going to create two variables. We have variable PUZ GFX HUD movie, which is another class we'll be creating, and we're going to call that a PUZ HUD movie. And then we have a variable called PUZ GFX HUD movie of the class version, and we're going to call that the HUD movie class. Now, usually whenever you do a variable of a class, you normally have it set down default properties. Not always, but normally. And in this case we do. So down default properties, we're going to set HUD movie class equals to the class puzzlegame.puz GFX HUD movie, which is the class we'll be creating. Next, we have a singular event destroyed, which is going to call on remove HUD, and then we're going to keep all the code that existed before. Singular events, or singular basically is the keyword there. What that means is that this is going to run, and it's not only one time in its process. If this gets called on again while it's still running this code, it won't run it again. It kind of helps prevent from destroying things that don't need to be destroyed twice. Next, we go to the remove HUD function, and we're just going to make sure that the PUZ HUD is actually equal to none. And if it is, we're going to close it, and we're going to set the movie itself to none, which is the PUZ HUD movie right here. Next, we go into post begin play, and we're going to create the HUD inside post begin play. So after everything's been set up and the player pretty much is around, we go ahead and recreate the HUD. Then we go into create HUD, and here's where we're actually going to create the movie instance. So in order to do that, we take PUZ HUD movie, which is the variable here. Right now this is empty. And then we're going to set it to a new HUD movie class, which is this. So we're taking this class and we're creating it basically. And then PUZ HUD movie is holding that class so that we can keep on referring to it, the instance of the class in the game. Then we set timing mode to tm_real. This is just for purposes in case if we're moving between levels, it keeps the HUD active. And then we have PUZ HUD movie.initialize, or init. So that is actually a function that's inside of the PUZ GFX HUD movie that we'll be going to. Okay, so now that we have all that done, we move into our Puzz GFX HUD movie. And inside of here, we extend from GFX Movie Player. Now, don't get totally confused because right now the Puzz GFX HUD movie, even though we're claiming it to be the movie, it's actually the movie player. The movie itself is a variable held inside of GFX Movie Player called Movie Info. And that we set to equal SWF Movie Game HUD Game HUD. And that pretty much is pointing to our content pack so we can load the to load that actual HUD for us. Alright, now we go to the top here and we set a few variables. First we have GFX objects, points MC, level MC, and collected MC. Notice how we use commas here. That stops us from having to keep doing variable GFX object, and then naming each one for each line. So we just set all three of them to the same thing. The comma is just pretty much saying and set this and set that. So we have points MC, which is a GFX object, level MC, and collected MC are also GFX objects. These are what we use to reference to the Flash movie. Inside of our Flash movie, I actually do have a points MC movie clip, a level MC movie clip, and a collected MC movie clip. Now, you could call this whatever you want because the way we actually reference it, I'll show you down below real quick, is in the initializing here. We actually set it from finding the root and then finding the actual movie clip, what we named it. So if you were to open up the Flash and you had the actual SWF to load into your Flash, you would see inside the root, you would see the collected MC movie clip, a points MC movie clip, and a level MC movie clip, all named as an instance name. And that's pretty much how you set that. Let's scroll back up to the top here. First we have three functions that all kind of do the same thing, but just a little bit different. First we have add to objective count, add to score, and then we have change level. All of them go to one function of their own. Increase objective count, increase score, and change level name. All of them also pass in the area, the GFX object that's connected to it. So the objective count is connected to the collected MC, the score is connected to the points MC, and the level name is connected to the level MC. So what exactly are these doing? They're kind of representing like the middleman, so to speak, of moving into our ActionScript functions or our Unrealscript functions that call on ActionScript functions. So, if we wanted to do any changes before we got to this point, that's what this allows us to do. Now, once we, for instance, let's say we wanted to change the objective count. Let's say a player collected an objective. We would call in this function, pass in the amount that he collected, which would probably be 1, and then we increase the objective count by that amount by calling on increase objective count. We scroll down to increase objective count, and what that is, we pass in a float parameter 1. ActionScript 2.0 doesn't have integers, they use numbers, so floats and numbers are pretty much together. And then you have a GFX object param 2, the object of course being the actual movie clip. And then in order for us to call on this ActionScript, we use some integrated code, and we use ActionScript void, which will basically tell it to look inside of ActionScript of this Flash movie and see if this function exists, and increase objective count is the function name. Then it'll run that by passing in these two parameters into the function for it as well. So it's going to pass 1 and it's going to pass the movie clip as well. And then it'll do whatever it needs to do on the Flash side. So on the Flash side, it obviously just increases the counter by 1, and it kind of keeps its own counter as well. And that's what happens with all of these. With the change level name, it passes a string into the ActionScript, and then that string is then used inside the level movie clip so that it'll display the level name for us. And then, of course, with the score, the exact same thing. So if you want it, there's other ways you can also get from Unrealscript to ActionScript, but this is the least intensive. It just takes a little bit more coding work, but for the most part, it does its job. Okay, so now moving down, we go to our initialize. So this is what gets called first before any of this even matters. And inside of here, we do super initialize player or init player by passing back in, like I said before, the parameter that exists. And in this, we actually initialize the movie. So first we want to start it, then we advance it to frame 0, which is pretty much the starting frame. And then, like before, we go ahead and we set all the GFX objects to equal something inside that SWF movie. And like mentioned also already, in default properties we have movie info equals SWF movie, game HUD. So this points to our movie that we created a content pack with. And that's all that's required to really get the HUD set up and going. At this point you could do all different things with Flash. If you wanted to make changes through Unrealscript or back and forth, you can kind of see how it's done. Like I said, inside of ActionScript in our Flash movie, we pretty much just have these functions, and they just pretty much make changes where it's needed whenever they're called on. So how do we call on them? Well, first let's go into PUZ Player Controller, and we're going to go to our Add Objective Counter. Here we're going to call on our first one, which is to add the add one to our Flash each time we collect an objective. So first we do local PUZ HUD PHUD, which of course is pointing to our actual HUD class. PHUD is equal to PUZ HUD, and then we're going to typecast that into MyHUD. MyHUD is something that's already created for us through the parenting classes of Player Controller. So we can access the HUD through that, but we still need to typecast it to our version of the HUD. Then from there we grab PHUD, and then we use PUZ HUD Movie. PUZ HUD Movie, of course, like we said earlier, is something we already created, which references to the actual PUZ GFX HUD movie. So in order for us to call on this stuff, we need to actually use this variable inside of this class. So we have phud.puzzHUDMovie, and then we call add objective count, add to objective count, and we pass just one in there. Now, if this one ever changes, we could always use different numbers. Like you might not want to use one for each one, and in that case, you may change this around to add whatever you actually want to add. Now that we have that done, we're going to go back to PUZ Game, and in PUZ Game we have also, for our score, we go to level completed, where we actually add up the player points. We also want to pass in the score that should be added to the display. Same thing, we do a local PUZ HUD PHUD, and because we held on to our PUZ player that we created inside Game in Progress, we can actually use that now to point to MyHUD and typecast it just like before. While we're in the player controller, you don't have to use a player controller variable, but because we're not in the player controller, we do. So we have phud equals PUZHUD, and then we typecast the MyHUD of the player controller in there, just like before. And then it's just as simple as calling on the function and then throwing the math in there. So the math will be done first, then we take that answer and we pass it in as a parameter to add to score. So if we have one objective, it would be 20 times 1 is 20. We pass 20 in, and then we throw that into the functions, which then calls on the ActionScript function to add it to the movie instantly. The last one we need to do is we go inside of Game in Progress, where we actually set the PUZ player equals PUZ PC. This code will probably change later, but for now, when we start optimizing, we'll probably change it. But for now, we're gonna just use it the way it is, because it's not really gonna cause too many problems, or actually probably any problems, to be honest. But it's not really the best way to code by putting things inside a tick. But because we are setting the PUZ player inside a tick at least one time, we need to access PUZ player. Otherwise, we'll have to do another for each loop somewhere along the line. So we'll just keep using this for right now. So inside of here we have PUZ player equals PUZ PC. So now we're going to go ahead. First we need to create a local variable like before, PUZ HUD PHUD, and then we do phud equals PUZ HUD PUZ player.myHUD. Once again, we're just typecasting there. And then as simple as calling on the function like before, and then we're going to actually use worldinfo.getMapName. Worldinfo is a class that pretty much is the class of maps, so to speak. It tells you everything you need to know about the map, information such as that. You can change a lot about the map through the code through worldinfo. There's a function inside of worldinfo called getMapName that returns a string. So what this is going to do is we're going to call this function on. It'll do this function first because it's inside the parentheses, and after it gets done, then it will be used as a parameter on to change level. So for instance, for test level 2, worldinfo.getMap will return that, and then that will be used inside change level, which is then set to ActionScript, which then displays for our screen test level 2. Now, this is a nice thing because you can start naming your maps whatever you want. You can name them fun things, or you can just call them level 1 if you want. But it's completely up to you how you want to handle your level naming. You might not even want to put the name of the level in each level, but that's up to you as well. You could always remove that in your own Flash game or Flash movie HUD for your game. And that pretty much completes this video.